They say the future isn't something we predict. It's something we create.
And the ones who create it, they think differently. They act boldly and they challenge the impossible.
Welcome to Prime Talks, where we sit down with the visionaries, the builders, the disruptors shaping tomorrow.
I'm Sylvia Sala, and alongside Litsky, we dive deep into the ideas, mindsets, and breakthroughs that move the world forward.
And today we have a really special guest, Dr. Peter Diamandis. If you ever wondered how to think exponentially, leverage AI, or position yourself for the biggest opportunities in the next decade, you're in the right place.
So Peter is a serial entrepreneur. He's a futurist, founder of the XPRIZE, and he's reshaping industries, funding moonshots, and redefining what's possible. So get ready, because this conversation will challenge how you see the future. I personally am very excited to be in conversation with Peter today because he has changed how I see the future. I am infinitely more optimistic about the future as a result of my friendship with Peter.
Amazing. And just before we dive in, a quick note. So Prime Talks isn't just about ideas. It's also about impact. Every single dollar this podcast generates goes directly towards mental health and related charitable initiatives, because stronger minds ultimately build stronger communities. And if you'd like to support, click the link in the description to donate. We'd greatly appreciate it.
All right, now let's jump in.
Let's go.
So, Peter, we had originally planned on doing this podcast with you in Los Angeles, but it was during the time of the wildfires, and you had to evacuate during that time. So I just wanted to start by asking you, first of all, how are you doing? How's your family? And what was your experience like being in Los Angeles during that time?
Sure. And good morning to you both, Sylvia and Mo. The family is safe and fine. The house is standing and has ash and smoke damage. So we're in the midst, I think, remediation after a month of negotiating with insurers or remediation companies. The remediation is starting tomorrow and will take, 3 to 4 weeks. So we'll be out of the house for a couple months. Thank God we have it lucky compared to so many who did not. I was sitting at my desk and on a Zoom, like I always am, and I look out the window and I see these plumes of black smoke coming, literally over the next hill. We're on the border of Santa Monica and Pacific Palisades. And I was like, what the heck is that? And it was like, I go on Twitter, on X, I look on the web, can't see anything. There's nothing appeared for the first hour. There was no news, there was no action. And finally the news starts coming. There's a fire in Pacific Palisades. And I'm like, okay, that's like a mile that way. And packed up a few bags and headed out. So that was the beginning of the odyssey. And so many friends and people I know, a few who lost their house for a second time. And it's kind of insane that in this day and age, this sort of thing still happens in terms of wildfires occurring inside of city limits. Wildfires out in the forests, this part of nature, and it's a part of a cycle of renewal, but they should not be happening in downtown cities around the world. And the challenging thing, I just did a podcast, my Moonshots podcast on this, is that this is not going to become infrequent, meaning look at the American West. There is enough dead wood, there's enough fuel in the forest that we're going to expect to see a significant part of the American West burning over the course of the next 20 years. And we need to do something about it. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Well, we haven't changed what we do. Anyway, so that's a bit of the story here.
Yeah. So I guess the irony is not lost that the XPRIZE Foundation, of which you are the founder, was already actively working on a wildfire-related prize. So could you tell us, first of all, what is XPRIZE, and can you tell us a little bit about this initiative?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the things that I'm proud of, I've started at this point, 27 companies, both for-profit and nonprofit over the years. And the XPRIZE is now 30 years old this year, incredibly. And the origin story of the XPRIZE, and I'll bring it back to wildfires in a moment. Origin story was, I was reading a book by Charles Lindbergh that he wrote in 1954. It was a Pulitzer Prize winning book called The Spirit of St. Louis, named after his airplane. And it told the story of a young man named Raymond Ortega, who was born in France under the Pyrenees Mountains, came to the U.S. penniless to New York, became a hotel busboy, hotel manager, then a hotel owner of the Hotel Lafayette. And World War II saw the emergence of aircraft. And he was a dreamer. And he said, one day we're going to be able to fly an airplane from my homeland of Paris to my new home of New York. And he had become successful, and he offered up a $25,000 prize in the year 1919. That prize was ultimately won by Charles Lindbergh in 1927, who flew from Roosevelt Field to Le Bourget. And in the course of that, reading that book, I was like, that's interesting. Incentive prizes, again, a prize, not like the Nobel Prize that you award somebody for something they did 10, 20, 30 years ago, or the Pulitzer Prize where you award someone for something they wrote, the past year, but a prospective prize, a prize that says, listen, this is the challenge, and anyone who can pull this off gets the money. It's called an incentive competition. Lindbergh won that incentive competition. I started researching these and said, they're amazing. You get typically 10 to 50 times the prize money in the purse spent by all the teams trying to win it, and you only pay after it's done. I'm saying this is like the most efficient philanthropy I've ever heard about. If you want to cause a change in the world, you put up one of these large prizes and your money only gets paid out after it's done. I mean, how amazing is that? So being a space cadet, I was born in the 60s, grew up passionate about Apollo and Star Trek. I came up with the idea of I wanted to do a private spaceflight competition. And took me a while, but found a $10 million donor, an amazing woman, Anusha Ansari, and funded a $10 million prize for the first team to build a spaceship. They carried 3 adults up 100 kilometers into space, land, and within 2 weeks do it again. And it was won in 2004. On the heels of that, I was able to attract amazing people, Elon Musk, Larry Page, James Cameron onto my board. And we've since launched, I don't know, let's see, 30 prizes in 30 years, about $600 million in prize purses that have driven over $10 billion in research and development to win it. So whenever I see a problem that I want solved, think XPRIZE. I think, okay, how do I get the world's smartest people focusing on this? And so this brings us to wildfires. It was about 5 years ago that I got, sort of displaced for the second time, evacuated due to fires encroaching on my home in Santa Monica. And I said, there's got to be a better way. This is insane. Why do these fires get this? And in fact, I said, I don't care why they get started. Why don't they get put out immediately? And I came up with the basic rules of the prize. Here's 1,000 square acres. Actually, it's 1,000 square kilometers. And a team has to monitor that land. And then if it detects a fire any place in that area that is 3 meters, 9 feet or larger, or if the fire is moving, you should put it out autonomously within 10 minutes. And so that's the idea. So imagine if you've got, if you have vineyards or if you've got a township and you don't want a wildfire in your town, imagine a system, a new form. Fire insurance is perverse. It pays you after your house burns down. What if fire insurance actually prevented your house or your city or your property from burning down? That's the vision of this. It took me the better part of 4 years to get that funded, which was insane. But we ended up raising about $20 million, $11 million of a purse and $9 million to operate it. And we launched it last year, actually in late 2023. And it's been operational. We've had like 140 teams that are working on this. We're getting down to the finals. And I think we have the winning technology here is going to be able to make wildfires a thing of the past. Right? Imagine if it's a power line sparking, if it's a lightning strike, if it's a terrorist lighting a fire, imagine that your city, your town, your vineyard, whatever it might be, is monitored and instantly a autonomous system is dispatched. Now, the beautiful thing about a prize is we don't guess how it's won. In this case, it might be aerial drones carrying large water supplies. I've seen some amazing technologies, using sound to put out fires, humanoid robots. It doesn't matter. We're going to have this Darwinian evolution, and we're going to test them head to head and see who's the best. And our goal is to spark a new industry. I'm sorry, it's a bad pun, but a new industry of individuals that are delivering a different kind of fire insurance. Like, I will prevent a wildfire from occurring on your property, period.
That's so. I was going to make one comment, and then I'll let you jump in. That, to me, I think is going to be such an exciting concept for the families that we work with, because the family office is usually the entity that can invest in these, what we would call moonshots, and these longer horizon ideas. And for those who are interested in what Peter started with the private space flight, as you know, it's sparked an entire industry now. And there's an incredible video of the Virgin Galactic first flight where you can actually see Peter in that video jumping up and down with the joy of seeing that vision realized in that commercial space flight. So we'll be sure to put a link to that video in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
Drive a 9-year-old having fun.
But maybe I'll just pick up where Sylvia left off. You know, obviously you've kind of adopted this entrepreneurial moonshot thinking, which has seen its fair share of transformations, and I'm sure we'll see many others. You know, Peter, I heard that, you know, as a kid, you dreamed of being an astronaut, and then you were told you can't do so because of poor eyesight. So you then proceeded to build a bunch of space-related ventures and businesses. But like, I think if you go back to your upbringing, you go back to those formative events, you go back to your role models, like, what really shaped your thinking around this entrepreneurial moonshot approach? And how could other leaders incorporate this approach into their strategy?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it really is all about your thinking. And I'll come back to what shaped mine in a moment. But, you know, I typically write a book every year. And I've been enjoy the process of, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. You know, I do my early meditation, give thanks and gratitude, and get super optimistic about the day ahead. I shape my mindset first thing in the morning. And then I write. And I just finished a book called Longevity Guidebook we can talk about. I've got another book which will come out in 2026 called Age of Abundance, which was a follow-on to my first book. But I'm hot and heavy on a book called Mindset Mastery right now, which I hope to get out at the end of this year, 2025. And I realized a while ago that when you think about it, if you think about the greatest leaders in humanity, whoever you might put in that category, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, whomever you think of as your greatest leader. And you said, what made them a great leader? Was it the friends they had? Was it the money they had? Was it the technology they had? Or was it their mindset, the way they saw the world, the way they dealt with hardships or opportunities? I hope everybody listening agrees it's their mindset. And so if that's true, then you should ask yourself the question, what mindset do you have? Where did you get that mindset? And more importantly, what mindset do you need for the decade ahead? Now, the challenge is that our default mindset, you know, we have 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections that make up our mind, our brain. And our brains evolved on the savannas of Africa 200,000-300,000 years ago. And they evolved for a world of clear and present danger. And the mindset we evolved, literally the neuronal paths to our amygdala and our hippocampus and our hypothalamus and all is a mindset of fear and scarcity. And that is the worst mindset to be facing this future coming at us at an exponential pace. Fear sets you back on your back foot and you're not leaning in and taking advantage. Scarcity has you hoard resources instead of investing resources. And so I spend a lot of time, you know, when I'm in a corporate boardroom or in front of a large audience speaking about how do you create the right mindsets, which for me include a purpose-driven mindset, first and foremost. And I teach about creating what I call a massive transformative purpose. And if people are interested, I created a large language model and a program will take you just maximum 5, 7, 10 minutes. It's free. You go to my and you can go through the process, and it will walk you through a series of questions that help you really extract what your purpose is in life. Mark Twain said something really beautifully. He said, there are two important days in your life: the day you were born and the day that you find out why.
Right.
I think having that why, having that massive transformative purpose that wakes you up in the morning, keeps you going through the day, gets you excited to double down, gives your life extraordinary purpose, is so important. So mypurposefinder.ai, you can go and play with that. And I built it for my abundance community of CEOs that I mentor, but I'm making it available to everybody. Again, it's zero cost.
That's amazing, Peter. I mean, I think you might be taking my job with that AI, but that's okay. I'm okay with that because we're all about scaling everyone's MTP. But just to tie that together for our families, we've spoken about how important it is, not just for an individual, but for a family to also have its own MTP as kind of guiding force of why and how we invest.
I could not agree with you more, Sylvia. And I love you for it. It's an individual should have an MTP. A family should have an MTP. Like, why are you doing what you do? Is there an organizing theme, right? And then companies should have an MTP as well. In fact, governments should have an MTP. And I've had conversations with heads of state of countries that are trying to figure out, how do we thrive in this decade ahead? If you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to everyone as well. So a purpose-driven mindset, I teach about an exponential mindset, a moonshot mindset, a longevity mindset. These are mindsets that I think are very important for us in the future.
Peter, do you mind sharing your personal MTP with us?
Yeah, not at all. So I shape an MTP every decade or so, and I want something that's going to carry me for a decade, because doing anything big and bold in the world isn't instant. It takes time. And I build ecosystems around these. So the MTP that I've been focused on for the last decade, and where I'm going in the next decade, historically, it has been to inspire and guide entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity. That's it. It's like, my mission is to support entrepreneurs, because I see an entrepreneur as someone who finds a problem and solves a problem. And I want to support them, inspire them, and guide them. I do that through my venture funds. I do that through the XPRIZE. I do that through Abundance 360 and Singularity. And towards what end? Not just to sell more widgets to more people. It's really, how do you do what you do to make the world more hopeful, to give people a compelling future, and to create increasing abundance in the world. I thought about each of those words very carefully. And so where I'm going, my next MTP is to inspire and guide, or support and guide, scientists and entrepreneurs to help humanity reach longevity escape velocity. I'm very much focused on, how do I add 30 healthy years on people's lives to give them the ability to get to what's called longevity escape velocity, which is a moment in time where technology is extending your life for more than a year for every year that you're alive. And we can talk about that, but this is going to be a result of AI and biotechnology, both.
Can we just before we leave, we go there, because I actually do want to go there.
Yeah.
But a couple strands I'd love to pull on. One is, you talked a little bit about some of the visionaries that you've both worked with and interacted with, and their mindset, and guys like Musk and Branson and Bezos and others. You've worked with all these folks. How has working with them impacted you personally? What wacky and interesting stories have stood out for you?
Yeah, and I didn't pull on the thread of my own mindset. I think part of my mindset began through my mom and dad, and your family shapes your mindset in an extraordinary fashion, which is why, as a dad of two 13-year-old boys, I think about how am I shaping their mindset. And parents listening, shaping your child's mindset is the greatest gift or greatest harm you can do, depending on where you're coming from. My dad and my mom were both born on the island of Lesbos in Greece. My mom came to the U.S. when she was 10. My dad came after medical school. And he went from being in this small little town, tending a goat and picking olives, where all of his high school friends became either a priest or a teacher, but he had a vision of wanting to become a doctor. And then followed my mom to the U.S., learning no English, knowing no English, and became a very successful New York OBGYN. And I saw the journey he had from this small little village in Lesbos, Mistigna, to Manhattan in New York as this incredible epic journey. It inspired me. At the same time, seeing Musk and Larry Page and Bezos and Branson and all of these guys, it's a realization that their success was a result of surviving serial failures, being driven, being committed, being passionate. I like to say these are all overnight successes after 11 years of hard work. And honestly, massive intelligence coupled with some luck in every single case. And so you make your own luck by not giving up. You make your own luck by surrounding yourself with incredible people. You make your own luck by being a good person with ethics. These are all things that drove me.
Great. Should we turn the conversation to some of the investing topics that we want to cover?
Sure. Let me just mention one other thing on the XPRIZE Foundation, because I think it's important I really want people to get this. We have incredible prizes. The Wildfire Prize is amazing. We have a $100 million prize that I got Elon to fund that will be awarded this April, and it was a gigaton carbon removal prize. So we're asking teams to demonstrate the ability to extract CO2 from the atmosphere and the oceans, but do it at a level that is able to translate to gigatons. We had 1,300 teams enter that competition. We're going to have a winner now. And in fact, the testing we've done with the finalist teams has outstripped like all the carbon ever removed. It's revolutionary. And so super excited about that prize being won. Thanks to Elon for funding it. I texted him one day and said, "Hey, would you fund this prize?" He goes, "How much?" I said, $100 million for carbon removal. He goes, "Sure." Quickest funding of a prize ever. I have another prize, which is $101 million for extending the healthy human lifespan, called the Health Span XPRIZE. It's $101 million because Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon, who's the first benefactor, he put up close to $40 million there, wanted it to be bigger than Elon's prize of $100 million at 101. And that one is asking teams to reverse the age of your muscle, immune system, and mind by up to 20 years. And we have 620 teams competing for that one. Amazing stuff. That will be won by 2030. So I just think we're living during this extraordinary magical age where we can solve the world's biggest problems. What's required is the passionate, committed human mind and giving people a target to shoot for. So that's xprize.org. If folks are interested, our head of philanthropy that works with families who want to create a prize or support this, his email is simply Steele, STEELE @xprize.org. And he's amazing.
Fantastic.
Before we pivot conversation on investing, I also just want to let our listeners know that there are different ways to plug into the Peter Diamandis ecosystem. He has a phenomenal conference, which I've attended in LA, which is the Abundance 360 conference, primarily attended by families and business owners. And then he also has these longevity trips that he hosts, I think, twice a year, which are...
We've narrowed it down to once because my schedule has gotten so insane. But it's a 5-day, 5-star experience where I will introduce you to the top scientists, entrepreneurs in longevity during the 5 days. And people are there because they want to invest in the field, or they have a family medical problem they want solved, or they're just intensely curious.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And I think I just, segueing from the XPRIZE, because I think that the economics of the XPRIZE and the ROI on the XPRIZE is staggering. You're also in the venture game, so where you don't have thousands of teams competing for capital quite the same way. You deploy capital and then see how they do. So how do you straddle this really long-term futuristic bets with near-term economic viability? How do you think about that? And then we'll talk a little bit more about, we'll dive deeper into what you're actually doing on the venture side.
Sure. So I typically try and surround a problem and go deep into it. So when I was focused on space early on, I built something called the International Space University, which is still one of the leading graduate institutions for the study of space. Built the Ansari XPRIZE for private spaceflight, built a number of companies there, wrote extensively about it, and basically got to know the entire ecosystem, and then was just really focused on supporting the leading players to do as best they could. I've known Bezos since college. I started the first student space organization called SEDS, Students of Exploration and Development Space, while I was at MIT as an undergrad, and Bezos started Princeton chapter there. And when I met Jeff years later after he had started Amazon, I said, "Jeff, what's this Amazon thing? I thought you wanted to do space." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to make my money in Amazon and I'll spend it in space," which is a simple 1-2 plan, which he's executed perfectly. For me right now, I am focused on surrounding longevity and surrounding AI. I think they're the two biggest multi-trillion-dollar opportunities on the planet, and the two that are going to be the most transformative for society. And I built a venture fund for around each, and writing books around each, creating conferences around each. And they're short-term and long-term, but it's going deep in a multitude of different dimensions around each of these areas, and they all support each other.
And so if we just go, even before getting into the specific technologies around longevity and AI, probably have some thoughts about the impact of AI, or kind of the exponential technology, on capital, on markets, on asset management writ large. Can we just touch on that before we dive into those?
Yeah. I did a Moonshots podcast with Ray Dalio yesterday, who runs, Bridgewater's the $130 billion hedge fund, the largest on the planet.
Right.
And we talked about this in detail. And it's a double-edged sword. We're going to see productivity, go to infinity, where AI and humanoid robots are going to massively increase productivity around companies and countries. I think we'll see next year, 2025, global GDP is estimated at $110 trillion. That could go through the roof at far accelerated rates than we ever had. But the problem is that it breaks the old adage of our central bank, the Fed, which is sets, its job is to keep employment and keep inflation in check. But what happens when you lower interest rates and companies, instead of hiring employees, hire more AIs and robots? So there's going to be, it's uncertain. Ray just wrote a book that he's releasing for free called Why Countries Go Broke, and looking at the debt cycles. So we have to look at this. I mean, the U.S. Spending has been out of control. We'll see if the new White House and Elon's Doge project can help stem that. But realistically, we're going to have the next 5 to 7 years are going to be a very challenging 5 to 7 years on many dimensions. There's going to be a lot of disruption in the markets.
Right.
Disruption comes from entire industries being reinvented. We have a number of AI, winner-take-all competitions going on between, on a national level, U.S. and China primarily, and then on a company level, it is Google versus Microsoft versus AI versus Anthropic versus Amazon and NVIDIA, and they're all rotating in a faster and faster engine here.
Right.
And so this is why, as Sylvia mentioned, I run my Abundance Summit every year, an Abundance 360 membership. I've got 600 family offices, CEOs, investors that I mentor through the year, and we try and keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on, because I think some of the greatest wealth will be created and lost in this process. There's going to be a level. I mean, I think in the long run we will get to tremendous stability and tremendous abundance, where every man, woman, and child has access to all the food, water, energy, healthcare, education that they want. But it's the turbulence in the interim as things are being shaken up that one has to really stay on top of and educate themselves about.
And so practically, because you're making investment decisions in real time in this environment that's where you have accelerating and unprecedented disruption, what frameworks or maybe criteria do you use to identify the opportunities that are going to come out the other end?
So one of the frameworks I use that I wrote about in a couple of my books, Abundance and Bold, is called the 6Ds framework, that anything that can be digitized needs to be digitized. And during the early days of digital growth, the growth is very deceptive. The first digital camera from Kodak was 0.01 megapixel images recorded in black and white on a tape drive. The next year was 0.02, then 0.04, then 0.08. All look like zero to the executives at Kodak. But you double something 10 times, it's 1,000 times bigger. You double it 20 times, it's 1,000,000 times. Double it 30 times, it's 1,000,000,000-fold. So 30 doublings later on these digital cameras, Kodak was bankrupt. Why? Because they failed to understand the technology that they had, the first mover advantage, the patents. They ignored it. They thought of themselves in the paper and chemicals business, which is where the profit was at the time, but was not the purpose with which they were created. George Eastman, when he built Kodak a century earlier, his goal was to help preserve people's memories.
Right.
And they avoided the tech that would enable that massive purpose that George Eastman had. And so digitize, it's deceptively slow until it becomes disruptive. And in the course of that, it dematerializes, demonetizes, and democratizes. So the camera, physical camera goes away. It's now on your cell phone. It's dematerialized, along with, you have millions of dollars of free stuff on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Two-way video conferencing, video cameras, still cameras, record collection, all of this stuff, we don't even think about. GPS, that you would have spent millions of dollars on 30 years ago are now free as apps on your phone. They're dematerialized. The cost of replicating ones and zeros is free, so it demonetizes it, and it can go to every kid with a smartphone in Africa. It's democratized. So I'm looking for companies that are digitizing, dematerializing, demonetizing, and democratizing new products and services, because they will eventually all happen. We're doing that on building houses. We're doing that on health and biology. We're doing that in finance. Look at Bitcoin. I'm a huge Bitcoin believer. It's my number one asset. And, Bitcoin in the early days, looked like zero for the longest time. And then it becomes disruptive into the marketplace.
And just wrapping up on this, because, Sylvia pointed out that you're this eternal optimism, and you talked a little bit about how you set your mindset in that direction. Given the fact that we're all observing these technologies being ultimately way smarter than all of us and able to do much more than all of us, what kind of gives you that optimism to avoid that doomsday scenario that we will just be the pets of these machines one day?
So a couple of things. Number one, I believe that the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. Just if you let that sink in for a second. And so my mission is help entrepreneurs see these opportunities and solve them. It's like, great, a problem. Let's solve it. That's a mindset trick, right? Yes, it is a problem. Absolutely. It's huge. It's a huge problem. what an amazing business opportunity to go and solve. And the tools that we have to solve these problems are stronger than ever before. The second thing is that I'm not worried about artificial intelligence. I am worried about human stupidity. And so I do believe that as AI goes from where we are today to what is loosely defined as artificial general intelligence and then digital superintelligence, that we will have effectively AI systems that support the better angels of humanity. I think we are safer as a species with digital superintelligence than without it. I think that ultimately these AI systems, which are today smarter than humans, we've seen Claude 3.5 at an IQ of 120. I expect there will be a number of systems out this year which are, IQs in the 150 or above. I had Elon with me at the Abundance Summit last year, and then I interviewed him again in Riyadh at the FII Summit where I chair their AI committee. And, his expectation is that by 2029, 2030, we'll have AI smarter than the sum total of all of human intelligence. Now, that's a pretty bold statement, but if you've got a system that is that intelligent, the idea that it has the desire to destroy humanity or be used by one group to destroy another, for me, sounds ridiculous. I think the more intelligent a system is, the more peace-loving and abundance-minded it is. We have no lack of resources. The Earth is a crumb in a supermarket filled of resources and space. And I think just people have watched too many Hollywood movies. Remember, Hollywood's mission is to grab your attention. The same as, I don't watch the news anymore. You couldn't pay me to watch CNN or Fox. It's like I call CNN the Crisis News Network. That's my acronym for them. Their job is just to attract my eyeballs to their advertisers. And so it's dystopian after dystopian after dystopian. And they differentially feed you all the worst stuff going on the planet to capture your eyeballs. But that's not the only thing going on. There are amazing things going on in the world. And so that's what I focus on. I focus on, okay, problem, solve it. Problem, solve it.
Fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, I'd like to ask just quickly, I know we don't have that much time left, but do you ever think about, will AI become conscious? And what does consciousness mean to you in that construct?
I do, Sylvia. I think about that. And the answer is obviously, I don't know. And nobody knows. I was literally, the week the fires happened, I had set up a salon with the head of Google's quantum labs and then the head of Paul Allen Brain Institute, who's an expert on consciousness, and then one of the top experts on psychedelics. I was going to do an evening looking at the intersection of consciousness, quantum technologies, and psychedelics. And for me, we're just exploring and learning that right now. The quantum world is a fascinating and bizarre world. And from what I read, consciousness is a quantum phenomenon. And we just now have the tools to understand that. If you believe sort of the works of Eckhart Tolle, he thinks everything is conscious at some level or form. And if that's true, then an AI system could be conscious as well.
Interesting. So maybe let's dive back into the longevity conversation, because I think I've maybe read something of yours which addressed longevity as like a disease, like it could be treated, it could be addressed, and then at the same time, there's a lot of noise out there around this. What's truly possible? Where are we? Maybe can we level set, and what are you working on that you're most excited about today?
Yeah. And just to correct something, the idea is that aging as a disease. Right. And that aging is a disease that we should think of as curable. It's a bold idea, but one that is getting more and more traction. So let me give you a couple of the way I frame the whole longevity or health span conversation. First of all, in everyone's mind, whether you like it or not, you have a number. If I ask you, how long do you think you will live? You have an answer. And you got that from somewhere. Maybe you got it from your mom or your dad, or from the Bible, or from, a random conversation, but you've got a number. And that number has an impact on you. And so why do you believe that number? And what if you could change that? We know that humans can routinely, in increasing numbers, make it to age 100. The longest known well-recorded human made it to 122. God knows if the biblical 800-year, 900-year lifespans were extrapolations or what, but we know 122, and we know people routinely make it to 100, and that's increasing globally. We also know that the average life expectancy in the US is about 78, 79, but the health expectancy is 63. It means that there's this gap of like 16 years between the time that you live, but you're unhealthy for the last 16 years. And one of the immediate goals is, let's close that gap and make sure you're healthy till you're 80, and for a multitude of reasons. So if we say 100-year life expectancy for humans, okay, that's fine. But did you know that the bowhead whale, the largest mammal, can make it to 200 years routinely? And that the Greenland shark can make it to 500 years of age routinely and have babies at 200 years old? How does that sound, Sylvia? You can get a whole...
Yeah. I was with you until you said the babies at 200. I was like, I'm good with all of it till that point.
But so when I was in medical school and I learned about these long-lived sea animals, I was like, if they can live that long, why can't we? And I said, it's either a hardware problem or a software problem. And we're going to have the technology to solve that. And so I believe that this next decade is the period during which we're going to have those breakthroughs. We're in the midst of a health span revolution. And a lot of this is going to come from the impact of AI. Dario, who is the head of Anthropic, one of the top AI funds, was on stage at Davos a couple weeks back, and he said that his expectation is that in the next 5 to 10 years, we could potentially double the human lifespan. And just let that sink in for a second, right? George Church and David Sinclair and Ray Kurzweil and people I interviewed from my latest book, a longevity guidebook, say the same, that we are within a decade's time of massively extending the human lifespan. And I want to translate that from lifespan to health span, because really you don't want to be, alive, drooling in a wheelchair for an extra 50, 100 years. Well, you want the vibrancy. You want to look good. You want to think clearly. You want to move well, right? You want to have that vibrancy in life. And that's the objective. So that's the definition of longevity and health span for me. And the way I'm going about surrounding this problem again is, I built a venture fund called Bold, and we have a later stage fund. So we have Bold 1, 2, 3, and we're just now closing on Bold Longevity Growth Fund, which is a $100 million fund, where I think 60 million of it is closed, and we're investing in later stage deals that are driving towards extended human longevity and health span. And then I've got my longevity platinum trips that Sylvia mentioned. I have one of my companies, and then writing some books. I wrote a book with Tony Robbins called Life Force on the subject, my recent book, Longevity Guidebook. And then I built a company called Fountain Life, which I think is if I were to ask, and I was at a summit yesterday with a few hundred people, I said, okay, how many of you absolutely understand that you have nothing going on inside your body you need to worry about? How many of you know you're healthy? Please raise your hand. And no one raises their hand because you don't actually know unless you look. And so Fountain Life is a company I built with Tony Robbins and Bill Kapp, who's now the CEO, Mark Benioff was an early investor, and we built these longevity centers. We have 4 today. We're adding 4 more. Today, we're in New York, Dallas, Naples, and Orlando, which is our headquarters. We're adding LA, and probably one in the UK this coming year. And these centers are diagnostic and therapeutic centers. So you go in, you give us about 4 hours of your time. And during that time, we digitize you. Full body MRI, brain vasculature MRI, coronary CT with something called a clearly overlay that's looking for soft plaque, a low-dose lung CT, a DEXA scan, your full genomics, skin scan, retinal scan. For women, we use a special ultrasound breast, your full blood chemistries, your microbiome, your metabolome. It's 200 gigabytes of data about you.
Wow.
And it's uploaded into our AI system and our physicians. And the goal is twofold. Is there anything going on inside your body you need to know about right now?
Mm-hmm.
And then what's likely to happen to you in the future, and how do we prevent that? And I go every year. It's not a once and done. Every year I go for a full scan, I hold my breath, and every quarter I fine tune things. I do additional testing, I modify my meds and supplements. I do about 80 pills a day, maybe more. But
Wow.
I just yesterday met with my doctor, looked at all the results, dropped this, added that. I'm basically investing in myself.
And Peter, I don't know if you remember, but I got to go to Fountain Life because you told me about Fountain Life. So I was some years ago, and what was amazing was that I went at the stage of life where probably not a lot of women are thinking about menopause, but they had me proactively thinking about that journey years ahead, and they did a baseline testing of my hormonal levels when I was, let's say, at my optimal levels.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been able to do this sort of like incredibly fine-tuned journey of matching those hormonal levels as I go through these later stages in life. So I actually credit Fountain Life with how easy it's been for me to be perimenopausal. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're
It
welcome.
really works. It really works.
Yeah. And so here are the numbers from the first 5,000 people who went through through Fountain Life. All of them believing they're healthy. 2% had a cancer they didn't know about. 2.5% had an aneurysm they didn't know about. 14.4% had either metabolic, cardiovascular, neurodegenerative disease. And you don't know unless you look.
Mm-hmm.
When people are fearful, they say, I don't want to know. And bullshit, of course you want to know. You're going to find out eventually. Do you want to know now, we can do something about it, or when it's too late?
Right.
And so that's the diagnostic side. And then Fountain has a whole set of advanced therapeutics to really slow aging. You know, my new book is called a Longevity Guidebook, How to Slow, Stop, and Reverse Aging and Not Die from Something Stupid. And the not die from something stupid part is, in fact, understanding what's going on in your body, because it's like you wouldn't drive down the road in your car with your eyes closed, unless, full self-driving, but you're driving through life with your eyes closed, not understanding what's going on inside your body. So you can go to fountainlife.com and get more information about that. You know, we have 2 levels of the membership. One is a $1,500 level for all of the data uploading and then quarterly additional testing. Plus, you get a medical team for the year. It's your concierge team. You get a functional medicine doctor, a nurse, a dietitian, and a health coach that work with you through the year.
Yeah.
And I used to pay $20K just for having a single concierge doc, not a team and not all the data. But then we have a version for companies at $6,500 per employee for the upload and a review of results, but without the medical team. You just, you get the upload, you get the results, you get some advice, and then
It's amazing.
yeah,
It's absolutely amazing.
Anyway, I'm proud of it. This is the future of medicine: proactive and personalized and predictive.
And Peter, like, I actually have a feeling that you're going to move the needle on this, but what does this actually mean? Like, if people are living, as you said, we doubled the life expectancy. How does this shift societal norms?
Yeah.
What are implications of
We're going to
longevity?
find out. So, it's going to change a number of things. Does death do you part? Are you married for 100 years? I don't know. Are you, I think people retire. If you love your job, why do you retire? I understand if you don't like your job, that's fine. But if you do love what you do, you retire either because you're forced to by regulation, or you're in pain, or you don't have the energy for it. But imagine you don't have pain, you have all the energy, you're vital, you're excited about life, and you're at the top of your game. Most wisdom, most relationships. Why would you ever want to retire? I'd start my company number 29, 30, and 31. And so therein lies, I think, the potential. There was a study done out of Harvard, London School of Business, and Oxford that said for every additional healthy year you give society, it's worth $38 trillion to the global economy, which is an incredible number. You can Google it.
Wow.
At the end of the day, we forget that the average human lifespan as we were evolving on the savannas of Africa was like 28, 29, 30. That's how old people lived. They didn't get beyond that. And even 100 years ago, at the turn of the 20th century, the average human lifespan was about 40. We've doubled it, and we're going to double it again.
Wow.
So I do think it's a multi-trillion-dollar market, and that's why, for me, I invest in it through my funds and the venture fund. And then the other market is AI, and I have a large fund out of MIT called Exponential Ventures, xpv.ai. We cherry pick the smartest students out of MIT and Harvard. The two campuses are effectively one right now. And the fund has had, like a 45% IRR over the last decade.
Incredible.
Incredible.
It's like, if you look at the charts, MIT creates more unicorns than any other school. USC is next, and then Stanford is third. It's been an amazing journey in that regard.
So maybe just as we start to close here, a couple of things just on AI. Maybe if you could just share, you have a unique vantage point where you're looking at this, like the panoply of technologies across all these industries. All of them are bleeding edge. Which, if you could think about the one that's most exciting for you, which is most shocking for you, maybe even the craziest thing that is actually proved to be impactful or transformative, what comes to mind?
Well, I think what is going to be shocking that people don't realize isn't just the AI systems. And we're all going to have, if you remember the movie Iron Man, my favorite instantiation or version of AI is Jarvis, right? Where we're all going to have a version of Jarvis, an AI that's with you all the time, that you give permission to read your emails, watch what you're eating, listen to your conversations, and is there to support you at every stage. Remember the names and birthdays of your friends' kids, what the last conversation you had. It listens and it says, I love that necklace that Sylvia's wearing. And then it'll, in the back, it'll note that and then show it to me later and say, hey, I can buy it for you here at this location. Do you want it? Or maybe I give my AI surprise and delight budgets and it just orders stuff for me, right? So, but I think what's shocking and people are not ready for is what's coming in humanoid robots. So we're going to see AI get a physical instantiation in humanoid robots. And there are probably well over 100 well-funded humanoid robot companies on the planet. Tesla with Optimus, Figure AI with their Figure 2 and soon Figure 3 robot are two examples. There's Digit, there's Apollo in the US, there's a number of them out of China. And the prediction from Brett Adcock, who I'll have on stage with me at the Abundance Summit this March, who's the CEO of Figure AI, and also from Elon, is that by 2040, we'll have, drumroll please, 10 billion robots on the planet, humanoid robots, more than we have humans. And the cost of these robots powered by artificial general intelligence, eventually digital superintelligence, these robots the cost expectation is $30,000 to buy one, translates kind of like to $300 a month to lease one, $30, is it $10 a day, 40 cents an hour? So a lot of fascinating. I asked my friend, what's it gonna feel like when you're seeing humanoid robots walking around your backyard or in your home or on the street? And his answer was, it's going to feel normal. We quickly adopt to these things.
Wild. Absolutely wild. And maybe just finally, last question from me, just like, you've spoken about so many of these of solving humanity's grand problems and challenges. If I could get personal for a minute, how has that work impacted your personal relationships, your own life? What lessons have you learned in terms of balancing your ambition and creativity, and then obviously connection and family and so on?
Wait, Mo, are you asking for a friend?
I'm asking for a friend. Yes,
Asking for a
absolutely.
friend?
This is completely hypothetical, Peter.
You're not asking for yourself, are you?
Not at all. No.
Listen, I'm a kid having a blast, and my job is to mirror that to my kids, to show them a world that I'm excited about, enthusiastic about, for them to also love the future. I tend to look at problems as problems that can and should be solved. I one of the biggest challenges I have is I'm a kid in the candy store in terms of, the things I want to do. And how do you balance all of that? And I remember I was having a conversation with Tony Robbins on my abundance stage a couple years ago, and we talked about work-life balance. And he's like, there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's work-life integration. How do you, if I live my life, I live my purpose, I live all that I do, it's 24/7, and I try and integrate my life and what the things that I do. I'll say I had kids when I was 50, right? I'm 63 now, and they're 13. And that was a great longevity play for me because I could focus on my career in the early part of my life. And now if I want to spend time with the kids, I can tell someone to screw off. No, I'm spending time with the kids. So anyway, I think this is the most exciting time ever to be alive. We're going to see huge transformations, dreams come true. Ultimately, my mission is uplifting humanity. How do you provide access to the food, water, energy, healthcare, education to every human on the planet? Help them live a life that they love as well. That's the work I do through the XPRIZE Foundation, through the venture funds, through the companies I build. And I've learned there is no problem we cannot solve, period.
Yeah. Peter, on that inspiring note, maybe we'll wrap it. I just personally want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, sharing your incredible insights with us and being so generous with your wisdom. We really appreciate it. And for all our listeners who are largely affluent individuals, family offices, accomplished leaders, there's a number of calls to action. We will include all of those in the notes. And if they want to learn more about you and your incredible work, where should they look?
Sure. My website, you can learn a lot about, just diamandis.com. I put out a blog twice a week, typically on AI and longevity. You can get it there. XPRIZE.org, if you're interested in supporting the XPRIZE Foundation, maybe creating a prize to solve one of the big problems that your family cares about. My podcast is called Moonshots, and we have some incredible people that we've had on there, from Elon and Mark Benioff and Ray Dalio and others. And then fountainlife.com, as I mentioned. And I'm just at Peter Diamandis, any place you want to go look.
Thanks again, Peter. We actually truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome, Sylvia. Anything for you, that.
Thank you.
And Mo, a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. And so I think we'll wrap it there. But Peter, this was phenomenal. So many beautiful insights that we're excited to share with our team, with our families, and in the community. If there's any way, we will do also, maybe we'll make a special note about the Fire Prize, because I think there might be particular interest in supporting that right now.
Yeah, we would love additional support for that, for sure.
We'll try to highlight that specifically. I think that's very timely.
Yeah.
And if there's any other way we could be helpful to you, please don't be a stranger. The entire purpose of this podcast and everything we do here is charitable. So,
I think it would be great at some point Mo, to introduce you to Anusha Ansari, who is the CEO of XPRIZE. She funded my first $10 million prize, and then she flew privately to the space station as the first, private female astronaut.
Wow.
And she's the CEO of the XPRIZE Foundation. And one of the things, we're just now beginning to build relationships with family offices for the purpose of inviting them to be part of the XPRIZE events or consider being involved. And then another thing I've done with Family Office Exchange, Fox, if you know them, is presented Exponential Ventures and Bold Longevity Growth, the two funds, inviting people who want to get involved, because we're closing out both funds over the next couple of months. So if you ever do like Zooms with the families, or if there's an event where one of the team members can go and present, I think those are both.
Peter, who should we reach out to get decks on those?
I'll handle it.
Yeah.
Okay, just so that our investment team could get their eyes on it.
Happily.
That would be great.
All right.
And Peter, really, it's a delight. I've known about you for years. I mean, funny enough, we have the same exact workout regiment, morning regiment, writing regiment. The only minor, like virtually insignificant detail is that people actually read your stuff and you're incredibly successful. The future belongs to those who don't just listen, but lead. And at Prime Talks, we're hoping these conversations help you do exactly that. Lastly, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next conversation with the thinkers and doers who are shaping our world.